Hello and welcome to Immigration USA with Kathia. Today, I would like to talk to you about all the news that have happened this week and how we as immigrants need to learn how to protect ourselves. My name is Kathia Quiros. I'm an immigration lawyer in Las Vegas, and I represent clients all over the United States. I'm a defense immigration lawyer, and I concentrate on family practice, which means that I help families stay together, and I do a lot of humanitarian visas like VAWAs, U visas, T visas that are available to help those who have been victims of crimes. So today we're going to talk about all the things that we've been hearing in the news and how we can learn from those to protect ourselves. I mainly talk to everybody who is undocumented, who has an employment authorization, who has an asylum pending or an asylum approved, who is a refugee, or who has a green card holder. Because today, green card holders, residents, people with permission to stay here, and undocumented immigrants, we all are in the same pot. The government is doing a lot of things that could endanger your current situation. So please stay tuned and learn with me. Well, the first news of the week is that TPS for Venezuela was extended. And you would ask, but wasn't it canceled? Yes, it was. On January 17, 2025, President Biden extended TPS for Venezuela. But as soon as President Trump came into office, the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Christine Owen, canceled TPS for Venezuela. Well, as soon as it was done, civil organizations filed lawsuits against the termination of TPS. And why did they do that? Well, mainly because in order to provide a benefit to an immigrant, the government has to go through a process. And in order to take that benefit away from an immigrant, the government has to go through a process. Well, in this case, the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security did not go through that process. She just said, I'm going to cancel it. They are all criminals, and they are bringing criminals to the United States. And the truth is that the reasons that she used to cancel Venezuelan TPS were not exact, were not true, because people who have TPS from Venezuela are required to prove that they're not criminals. Even more, if you have criminal record, you cannot obtain TPS. So anyways, they filed a lawsuit, and 2 days ago, a judge in Los Angeles decided to put a suspension to the cancellation order. So did the judge say the cancellation is wrong? No. The lawsuit has just started. The government hasn't decided that the government is fighting to keep the cancellation going. But the process of the lawsuit is going to take some time. That the judge has decided that in the meantime, while he decides if the cancellation of TPS is constitutional or not, in the meantime, these people with TPS from Venezuela cannot just lose their TPS status. So a day after the judge made this decision, the Department of Immigration, USCIS, announced that the employment authorizations that all TPS from Venezuela from 2023 were holding in their hands have been automatically extended. What does this mean? Well, employment authorization cards are documents that have an issue date and an expiration date. And normally, immigrants, we file for renewal of this employment authorization. Well, renewals with the Department of Immigration take several months, some of them years. So because the government knows that these processes take a long time, they have given an automatically extension. So it doesn't matter if the document says it expired April 2nd. Now, with this announcement in the Federal Register, the employment authorization card has been automatically extended until April 2nd, 2026. Now, aside from the automatic extension, which is great news, aside from this, we need to re-register. And what is re-registration? Well, when you have TPS, TPS is temporary protected status. So every time it's announced, the government gives it to you for 18 months. And in order for you to get another 18 months, you need to re-register. You need to refile the application for TPS. So in this case, everybody who has TPS from Venezuela, from the 2023 version of TPS, they need to re-register. And how do you do that? You file Form I-821 with Form I-765. Both applications are in the website of the Department of Immigration, www.uscis.gov. So it's very important. If you know anybody from Venezuela who has TPS, it's very important that they learn these and they do it right away. So please share this show, share this message so that we can get as many immigrants to learn the news so they don't miss the opportunity to continue working legally in the United States. Now, in the meantime, are they saved? No. The government is still going to fight for the cancellation, but at least for the moment, we are in a better place than we were last week. Now, that's news number one. Let's go to news number two. The second news is that during this week, we figured out how is that the government, ICE specifically, the Office of Deportation, how is that they decide when an immigrant is a member of a terrorist organization like the Tren de Aragua or a narco cartel or a gang like MS-13 or one of those. Well, we found out that they have a point system. And this point system, in some areas, has very good information, and in some areas is extremely subjective. And that's why the government has made mistakes and has deported people who are clean and had nothing to do with Tren de Aragua or any gang. So let me tell you what happened. Well, we saw this point system, and this point system has things like if the person has ever committed a crime, and in the documents, we can see that they've been a member of the Tren de Aragua or of a gang or a terrorist organization, then they get so many points for having that. And if they have more than 8 points, then the government assumes they are a terrorist or a serious criminal and they should be deported. And that part, well, if they've been convicted of a crime and in the documents it says that they've been a member of any of these organizations, then they should be deported, right? They shouldn't be here. That's a felony. Well, but there are other ways in which an ICE officer can decide that this person is a criminal or a terrorist that have nothing to do with them being convicted of any crime. It has to do with the tattoos that they have, or their social media posts, or the fact that some informant accused them of something when nobody has convicted this person of anything like that. And that is really scary. That is really scary because, like I said, it's very subjective. And it allows for the government to make mistakes that can be seen as abuse of power. So we are now fighting against these abuses of power. And that it's something that we are fighting for, not only for the immigrant, but we are fighting, the legal community is fighting, because we understand that if today we allow the government to commit these abuses of power against an immigrant, tomorrow it'll be against a U.S. citizen. And that is what we cannot allow. So let me explain. If a person has a tattoo that could be linked to a terrorist organization or a gang, then the person is deemed to belong to that terrorist organization or that gang. And that it's not right, because, for example, for a Tren de Aragua people, apparently they like the Real Madrid soccer team, and they like a soccer ball with a crown on top. Do you really believe that everybody with a Real Madrid tattoo is a member of the Tren de Aragua? No, right? No. And if that person is Venezuelan because he's Venezuelan, is he a member of a Tren de Aragua? No. If the person has a tattoo of hands holding a rosary, does that make them a gang member? If they are Salvadorian or Guatemalan, does that make them a gang member? No, of course not. Thousands and thousands of people today in 2025 firmly believe that having tattoos is a form of expressing themselves and it's a form of art. And tattoo artists will never promote any type of violence or terror by doing tattoos. So this is wrong, completely wrong. Now, even though this is wrong, it is our reality. It's what happening right. It is what is happening right now. So the best advice that I can give to my immigrant community is to please refrain from doing tattoos for now until all this big mistake is cleared up. Right now, if you're an immigrant in the United States, having tattoos is putting yourself at risk. So please avoid having tattoos. And if you have them already, please do your research. Figure out if any of your tattoos could be misconstrued as a tattoo that is related to a criminal organization, a gang, or a terrorist organization. And if it does, and don't belong to any of those, please change it. Because an ICE officer may look at it and may target you just because of a tattoo. Now, let's talk about social media. Social media, it's public in the United States and everywhere. And social media, it's not private, and therefore the government has access to it. Well, whatever you post in social media in the United States, as long as you don't incite violence, as long as you don't commit a crime, well, it should be free speech. And fortunately, in this new administration, what we're seeing is that immigrants don't have the right of free speech. And so the government is reviewing the social media of immigrants, and based on what they post, or based on what they publish, they are using that information to target immigrants as criminals. So let me give you an example. If you make any posts about drugs, marijuana, for example, marijuana is legal for US citizens, but it's not legal for any immigrant in any city, in any state of the United States. Marijuana is completely illegal for immigrants, regardless if they have employment authorization, green card, or they are undocumented. Marijuana, it's a consumption of marijuana is a reason to be deported from the United States. So if you start making posts and publishing information in favor of the consumption of marijuana and ICE sees it, then you are very inadmissible and you may be deported. The same thing with firearms. Firearms are not something immigrants should be close to. So if you start making posts or you take your pictures grabbing guns, and you are setting up yourself for deportation. So please stop doing that. And if you've done it, then remove those posts because they don't serve anything. They're no good for you. And I know I sound like an old lady, telling you what not to do. I am doing it with a lot of love. All I want is for my immigrant community to be safe. And we are learning this week what are the things that they are going after. So we cannot provide them with material to go after ourselves. So please make sure you take care of all these things. And because you're living law-abiding lives, and if you are, then none of these is important. Not right now. Right now, we have to do the best to protect ourselves and our families. Okay? The government is looking at the way you dress. They came out with this idea that Tren de Aragua members like to dress in fancy urban clothes, like to wear Jordan sneakers, and like to wear Jordan jerseys from the Chicago Bulls number 23. That's how ridiculous this is. And believe it or not, they are using that table with that information to decide who is a Tren de Aragua member, a gang member, or a terrorist. So please, if you like to dress that way, well, right now it's not the perfect moment for it. Right now, we just need to keep a low profile, keep doing what we're doing, which is working, living responsible lives, and do not give the government any option to attack you with deportation. That was the news number 2. Let's go to news number 3. Well, news number 3 is that as much as the number of deportation keeps going up, more than 100,000 people have already been deported, and the government is making serious efforts to continue detaining people who have prior order of deportations, who have prior criminal record, and people who have nothing but they are undocumented. The courts have been playing an important role in stopping the government from committing abuses of power. And I am going to give you a couple of examples that happened this week where we can see how it is not the same thing to deny a visa to a person who is outside the United States than to cancel a visa or revoke the visa or cancel the green card of someone who is in the United States. So this week, the courts have been battling with the lawsuits filed by students from prestigious universities, from doctorate programs, who have been detained by ICE and the government, and because the government believes that they are terrorists because they have protests in the universities against Israel in pro-Palestinian marches and protests. These people were in the United States legally under student visas or with a green card. And so the government came, detained them, told them your green card is canceled, your student visa is canceled, and now we're going to deport you. Can they do that? Well, yes. The answer is yes. They can. They can cancel the visa and they can process that person. They can allow that person the opportunity to defend themselves. And if the judge finds that they have no defense, then they can be deported. Now, what the government was trying to do, they cannot do. What the government was trying to do was detain that person, put them in a plane, and send them out to their country. That is not right. That is an abuse of power because everybody that is inside the United States has constitutional right to freedom. And they have the right to defend themselves when they are deprived of that freedom. And they are in the immigration laws of the United States, we have provided immigrants with the opportunity to go see an immigration judge whenever the government is trying to accuse them of something and deporting them. So as soon as the government detained them, then lawyers filed lawsuits in federal court to protect the right of these people to have an immigration hearing, to be able to stand in front of a judge, an immigration judge, and explain that what the government is accusing them, it's not true. So right now, these people are still in the United States, and most likely, after they prove their innocence, most likely they're going to go right on their own, because who wants to be in a country where they're being so mistreated? But what they don't want is to go with the label that they are terrorists only when they are not. They're both doctors and PhDs and people who are probably going to do great things for humanity, but right now they're in the middle of this mess. Are they the only ones? No, there's a whole bunch of them. A lot have decided to leave the United States on their own and not ever come back. Is this good for America? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think that protesting against the war is enough reason to be labeled a terrorist. I am all for protecting this country from terrorists, but I'm sure terrorists do not go to prestigious universities spending thousands of dollars learning how to help others. I'm sure they don't do all of that. They're not harming anyone by doing that. So I think there's an abuse of power, and it's a limit to freedom of speech, because protesting against a war, it's not attacking anyone. Inciting violence, yes. Committing violence, yes. I'm all for it. But protesting against a war, expressing your political opinion is not terrorism. It's something we all Americans do all the time in the United States because we have our rights. And one of our rights is freedom of speech. Anyways, that's what's going on that case. And the last news of the day is that because of this point system that the government has to decide who is a terrorist or a criminal and who can be deported, the government has made mistakes and has deported people who shouldn't be deported. And the government, for the first time this week, acknowledged that they have made a mistake. There is this young man from El Salvador who came to the United States and asked for protection, for asylum. And he received an order from a judge that said that although the person could be deported, the government was going to give him protection from deportation. And the judge specifically said in this order that this person shouldn't be returned to El Salvador. This guy was no criminal whatsoever, never been member of any gang, totally the opposite. He came to the United States running away from the gangs. Anyways, he gets apprehended by ICE. It's never sees a judge or anything. They put him on a plane, they take him to El Salvador, and they put him in the SECOT. SECOT is the maximum security prison in El Salvador. And he's there. And so the government, the lawyers filed lawsuits in federal court saying, this is so wrong. This is a young, innocent person. And the government says, oops, we made a mistake. But tough, the person is now in El Salvador, nothing we can do. It doesn't work like that. The federal judge has today sent an order to the government that says that person needs to be back in the United States by Monday at 7 p.m. So it is important for us to know that the government, it's not a dictatorship. There are laws. And while the government is doing a lot of things that don't seem legal, there are courts who are trying to stop all these illegalities. And while many people may believe that because we are immigrants, we don't have the same rights and we should be treated differently, at the end of the day, we are all human beings. And we all should be treated with respect and with dignity. And the most important thing that every U.S. citizen needs to understand is that abuse of power against an immigrant today will be abuse of power against American citizens tomorrow. And that's why we fight for the rights of immigrants. Well, I hope this episode today was interesting to you. If you like it, please share, follow, subscribe, turn on all the alerts. That way, every time I'm here telling you the news of the week, you can learn a little bit more about the life of immigrants in the United States. It was a pleasure being with you. Goodbye.